Hello everyone, this is Khaniella Patimo, studying Bachelor of Secondary Education major in English at Cebu Roosevelt Memorial Colleges. And welcome to my teaching demonstration for the subject Teaching and Assessment of Grammar. Good day, class. Please pass your assignments in front before I do the attendance. So please say present if your name is called. So since we're done with the attendance, let us start with our lesson. For today's lesson, we are going to discuss about morphology. Basically, we are going to go deep into word structure for today, which means we are going to learn about how words are formed and how words are derived. But before we proceed to our main discussion, I prepared an icebreaker to get all of us energized before the class starts. So are you ready? And for today's icebreaker, the game is entitled Undo It. And in this activity, I am going to choose 3 players to participate. As you can see in the slide, so our icebreaker for today is entitled Undo It. And in this game, I am going to choose 3 players to participate. As you can see in the slide, there are 3 envelopes which contains morpheme scripts which you are going to arrange to form the word. The first player to finish the task shall receive a reward from me. So are you guys ready? Shall we begin? So congratulations to our winner. You are going to receive a 7-Eleven gift card worth 100 pesos. So shall we begin our discussion? Morphology is a branch of linguistics that deals with the internal structure and formation of words. To put it simply, the study of morphology is focused on word formation. It analyzes the structure of words and parts of words such as stems, base, root words, prefixes, and suffixes. So through studying morphology, we will find out the minimal parts combined together to form a word. Moreover, this lesson would give us a deeper understanding about structuring words and therefore contributes to improving our grammar and vocabulary as a whole. So morpheme is the smallest meaningful unit in a grammar of language. It is the smallest morphological unit that cannot be divided into smaller parts, which means a morpheme can no longer be subdivided into smaller parts because this already is the smallest unit in a language. So a meaningful unit of meaning consisting of a word such as man or a word element such as ed in a word loft that can no longer be broken down into smaller parts. Another example is the word singers. So singers contains 3 morphemes. First is the root word sing, and the 2 suffixes which are the er and the s. So do you understand? Is it clear? Okay, now let's move on to the 2 types of morphemes. So please look at the slide. So there are 2 main types of morphemes which are the free morphemes and the bound morphemes. The free morpheme is also divided into 2 types, which is the lexical morpheme and the functional morpheme. On the other hand, the bound morpheme is also divided into 2 types, which are the inflectional morphemes and the derivational morphemes. So free morphemes are words that can stand by themselves as a single word. Example, girl, sit, up, and him. Another is run, swim, food. So those are examples of free morphemes. In English, free morphemes can be identified as a set of separate word forms such as basic nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, conjunctions, and prepositions. So again, free morphemes are divided into 2 types, which are the lexical and grammatical. So for the lexical morphemes are basically content words in a language that can be categorized as nouns, adjectives, verbs, and adverbs. For example, for a noun, an example is fruit, lady, man. For the adjective, one example is wise, another is beautiful, ugly. So for the first type of free morpheme, we have the lexical morphemes. So this type of morpheme is basically content words in a language that can be categorized as nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and verbs. Example of a noun are fruits, vegetables, human, man, girl. And for the adjective, examples are wise, beautiful, ugly, delicious. And for the verbs, we have the swim, eat, run, surf. And next for the adverbs would be quickly, fast, slowly, later. So these lexical morphemes are also referred to as open class. So why is it referred to as open class? Because the set of words in this type of class constantly changes as language develops. New words are being formed and added like through derivations, compounding, inflections, and etc. So now for the second type of free morphemes, we have the grammatical morpheme. So this morpheme is a type of morpheme which contains words that may not have clear meanings but have grammatical functions. Examples are conjunctions like and, but, however, articles like a and the. For the preposition, examples are beneath and above. For the auxiliaries, examples are is, are, and lastly for the pronouns, examples are he, she. So this type of morpheme is also referred to as closed class because the set of words in this class are much determined and hardly ever change in a language. So can you remember a grammatical morpheme which just recently been added to English? No, right? So sa kaning siya nga type of morpheme, so words cannot be easily added kay it takes time, unlike sa free morpheme nga dali ra kaayo ta maka-derive of word sa gikan sa usa ka word. So it's easier to form new words to free morphemes in lexical morphemes compared to the grammatical morpheme. So kasabot. So now let's move on to the bound morphemes. So this type of morpheme cannot normally stand alone and are typically attached to another form. So a bound morpheme usually is a morpheme that only occur in a combination. Examples of a bound morpheme are prefixes and suffixes. So for the prefixes, we have re, mis, and un. And for the suffixes, we have examples like nes, li, the ic suffix. So in order to make that a free morpheme or a root or a word, we will add a root word. So for the prefix re, we add a word like use, do, or form. So it becomes reuse, redo, and reform. So another example for the prefix is miss. So what root word would we add? So we can add understand to make it misunderstand, and communication to make it miscommunication. So for the suffix, we can use the word ness and add a root word happy to make it happiness. We can also use for the word sing, we can add s. S is a bound morpheme that we can add to make it. So now let's move on to the first type of bound morphemes, which is the derivational morpheme. So this type of morphemes are morphemes that are added to form a new word which are derived from the root word. So example is we have happy and we add a suffix and that becomes happiness. So happy is an adjective, and when we added a derivational morpheme, it becomes a noun. So happiness is a noun. Another is the danger. Danger is a noun, and when we added a suffix which is the ous, it becomes an adjective, which is the dangerous. Next we have the verb examine, and when we added a suffix, it becomes a noun, which is the examination. So in all cases, the derived word means something different than the root, and the word class may change with each derivation. For example, if a word is a noun, if that certain word is a noun, if we add a derivational morpheme, it may become another word class. For example, it becomes an adverb or it becomes an adjective. So do you get me? Okay. Now let's proceed to the next one, which is the inflectional morpheme. So inflectional morphemes are morphemes that are used to indicate aspects of the grammatical function of a word. It does not change the category and does not create new lexemes, but rather changes the form of lexemes so that they fit into different grammatical contexts. So compared to the first one, which is the derivational, this type of morpheme does not change the word's category. If it is a noun, it's still a noun, and if it's an adjective, it's still an adjective. Compared to that one for the derivational, which is if it's a noun, it becomes an adjective. So we have 8 inflectional morphemes in English language. First, we have the possessives, which we are going to add s. For example, Faith's, John's, Precious. Next, we have the pluralization. For example, foods, apples, chocolates. Next, we have the ing for the present participle. Example is waving, eating, running. Next, for the present singular, if I say dances, eats, walks. Another is for the past tense, which is example are example for the past tense are examples for the past tense are walked, snorkeled, waved. Another one next we have the past participle. Examples are written, eaten. Next we have for the adjectives, we have the superlative and comparative degree. For the superlative, if I say loveliest, prettiest. And for the comparative, are lovelier and prettier. So that's it for the different types of morphemes. Now let's move on to the next part of our discussion, which is the affix. So affix is a grammatical element in a form of a group of letters that is added to the main part of a word, which is the root, in order to create modified forms of the word. So the umbrella term used to refer to all types of affixes is affix. So as you can see in the slides, there are examples like this: li, re, nest, full, ave, meant, pre, and un. So these are examples of affixes, combination of prefix and suffix. So there are 4 main types of affixes. We have the prefix, the suffix, the infix, and circumfix. For the prefix, these are affixes attached at the beginning of the word. Example is anti, which means again. So if you're going to add it in a root word, it becomes an example is antisocial. Next, we have the mis, which means wrongly. So if you're going to add it in a word, it becomes misinterpret. Next, we have the suffix. So this type of affix is attached at the end of the word. Examples are ish and less. So for the ish, it means a little, like words like pinkish. Less, which means without or worthless. Now let's move on to the 2 uncommon types of affixes, which are the infix and circumfix. So for the infix, it is not common in English. So this is an affix inserted between a word. So this type of affix is common in Filipino. Example is like kumain. So the infix there is the which is attached in the or inserted in the middle of the word. So this type of affix is not common in English. Next, we have the circumfix. So this type of affix is attached both at the beginning and at the end of the word. Example is disrespectful. So this, which means not, and full, which means as much or as will fill, are the affixes in the word. So since we're done with the affixes, let us now proceed to the next part, which is the root, stem, and base. So before I learned about this topic, I really thought the roots and bases are all the same. They're both similar. They mean the same thing in English. But I learned that root word is a basic part of a word that carries meaning. So it is then a reducible kernel of a word form and may or may not stand alone as words. So a root may be a free root or a bound root. So a free root is a root that can stand alone as a word, like pass, surpass, and mount, and dangerous. For the bound root, it is a root that cannot stand alone as a single word, and it needs to be attached with an affix in order to be understandable. Examples are conceive, admit, and dissuade. So if we're going to think about it, so there is no such word like sieve, admit, and dissuade, but it becomes a root word if you attach an affix to it. For as you can see in the example, the sieve cannot stand alone as a word. So if you add a prefix such as the con, it becomes a root word and it means something already. Compared if you don't add an affix to it, it's meaningless. You can't understand it alone. So now let's proceed to the stem. So stem is a form of a word before any inflectional affixes are added. So do you remember the 8 major inflectional affixes? So in the word misbehave is the stem because the suffix d, which signals the past tense, is the inflectional affix. So if I say misbehaved, the word misbehave without the d is the stem because the stem again is the word before adding an inflectional affix. So if I say singers, so the stem is singer because it is the word before adding an inflection, which is the s that signals pluralization. Next we have the base. So base is the kernel of a word form to which any affix can be added. Examples are reading, run, and mount, simple, and swift. So to put it simply, base is a word form wherein you can add affix. So as long as you can add affix to that word, it becomes the base. If I say room, tour, food, plates, dancing, singing, that could be base because you can still add inflections. So please take a look at the slide. So there is a word, untouchables. So can anyone determine which is the root, the base, or the stem? Okay, so the root in that word is touch. Next, we have the base. We can have the base as the touch, untouchable, untouchable, and etc. Next, we have the stem, which is the untouchable. So why is it ang root is the touch? Why is it the root? Because it holds the most meaning or it holds the major meaning of the word as a whole. So why is it the base are the words touch, untouchable, untouchable? It's because for the word touch, you can add affixes. I can add affix such as touches, or I can make it touchable, or I can make it touched. So as long as you can add affix in that certain word, it becomes the base. Next, we have the stem. So the stem is untouchable because it is the word before adding an inflection, which is the s. That make s an inflection that makes it plural. Okay, so is it clear? So for the on, it is a derivational morpheme, which means not. So it is a prefix. Next, we have the touch, which is a lexical morpheme or the root word. It holds a meaning and it's free, so it becomes a lexical morpheme. So next we have the derivational morpheme, able, which is a suffix which means capable of. And lastly, we have the last suffix, which is an inflectional suffix or inflectional morpheme that signals pluralization. We have here another example, which is the word touched. So as you can see, the root and the stem are both the same. So how can we explain this one? Well, the base is the touch and touched. So why is it the root and stem the same? Because touch holds the meaning of the word, and it is the word which we added in an inflection, which is the ed. And why is it is the stem? It is because touch is the word before adding an inflection. So what can we get from this idea? So some roots are stems and some stems are roots, but roots and stems are not the same thing. So there are roots that are not stems, like dews, and there are stems that are not roots. So roots and stems may be the same sometimes, but it is entirely different from one another. So do you get me? So since we're done for today's lesson, as I can see, I think everyone really understood my discussion. I am giving you a quiz entitled Break It Down, Yo. So the direction is you have to break down the following words into smaller parts, so label each morpheme accordingly to its morphological description. So see example below on how to answer the quiz. So example is disqualified. So this, you are going to break down the word into smaller parts and you are going to put its meaning or its description below or beside it. So first one, we have the prefix, we have the this, which is the prefix and a derivational morpheme. And we have the qualify, which is a free root, and for the and base and a lexical morpheme. And lastly, we have ed as a suffix and inflectional morpheme. So there are 5 words which you are going to segment according to its morphological description. So reuse, actions, smallest, deceived, and impartially. So this quiz will be passed next meeting. So I guess that would be all for today. So I guess that would be all for today's discussion. So kamsahamnida class for participating for today. I hope you learned something. So God bless us all. Thank you.